So thanks for joining this week's show and tell. We only really did one last week because we wanted to make sure we were communicating about this project. This show and tell follows our planning session for the next sprint, and then you'll find one every couple of weeks from now on in. So in terms of how we want to use your time today, it's a similar format to last week. The first 20 minutes will be the show and tell itself, and we want to recap on what was talked about in last week's show and tell. We want to go through the Sprint 3 plan. We're going to have a bit of an update around scope and to talk about user research and research updates and progress there, and then leave a couple of minutes at the end for questions. Throughout the slide deck, you'll see at the bottom the aim of the discovery. We thought it was important to kind of leave it on each slide to remind ourselves and to challenge ourselves as to whether that's the right thing. So you'll see that throughout the presentation as well. So last week I introduced the team. I'm James Taylor, delivery lead at Parago. The other delivery team partner that we're working with is MSpark, and but we went through this last week, so I won't spend much more time on this one here. In last week's show and tell, really, as I mentioned, that was our first show and tell. We kind of introduced the team there. We looked at what a discovery is. So to kind of just go over that again, the discovery is about understanding the problem that needs to be solved. It's about identifying opportunities and benefits that can be taken forward. And that's a discovery in terms of the aim that we've got down here, deciding if and how CDPS should support the Welsh public sector to use digital and technology in a way that aligns with Wales's commitment to have net zero carbon emissions by 2050 or sooner. We talked a bit about what we were trying to achieve in terms of how that broke down into deliverables and what we've done so far, what the kind of user research plans were, and some of the research work that was being undertaken. Somebody, as if by magic, I think, is going to post in chat the links to last week's recording if you didn't catch it or want to share it further. And we also have a project webpage now on Notion that's been set up. So if you want to bookmark those, be able to follow what's going on. Feel free to put questions in the chat as we progress, but we will leave time for Q&A. I'm just going to go over and have a quick look now to see if there's anything there, or alternatively, you can raise your hand. Just pause for a minute. Okay, so in terms of Sprint 3 is starting today. As mentioned last week, the sprints are 2 weeks long, and just going to reflect some of the goals that we've come up with for this sprint. So we've got some project-wide goals, which is to look at the roadmap that we came up with at the beginning of the project and to see if that still makes sense. So what we want to do here is just make sure that we're on track and set some boundaries around how long certain things take to do. So we're all geared up and ready to do user research and keen to get on with that, but we're going to have a firm cutoff date on that so that it doesn't drag out, and that we can kind of publish our findings. We're also going to obviously be continuing the research and engagement work. We are hoping to do a kind of mid-discovery, because we'll be edging towards our midpoint in review and actually sharing some of our findings and making those public. So what I'm really keen for us to do as a team is to self-document as we progress through this work and share our findings, iterate on them so that you've got something new to look at every week. And so we're just working out what and how that's gonna be. Like, is it going to be a page on a CDPS website? Is it going to be something more visual? Is it going to be a series of videos? But we'll be working that through this week and publishing as we go. We have also overhauled our collaboration tools after a couple of teething problems, so that's why we find ourselves on Zoom today. So I'll just be doing my best to get the team up and running smoothly on those new tools. In terms of user research, you'll hear a bit more about it in this presentation, but we'll be launching our recruitment for user research this sprint and be conducting initial user research interviews. Any questions just now before I pass on to Jess and she can talk a little bit about what we've what about scope. Okay, I'll move on and over to Jess.
Thanks, James. So one of the things we've done since our last show and tell is to have a workshop around the problem framing for this discovery and just get a bit more clarity and shared understanding about the kind of boundaries around what we're doing and why. So I've put a few of the key points on this slide. This is quite hot off the press as we've been working on this morning. So to start with the motivations for doing this discovery, what we have condensed that down to is that primarily the motivation is to reduce carbon emissions in Wales through using digital and technology, and that is mostly through specifically in the public sector, helping public servants make decisions to lower the carbon footprint of their services. But we also think there is an opportunity to influence outside the public sector and help to reduce carbon emissions in other sectors. And that could be through inspiring and influencing how digital and technology is used in other sectors, being a bit of a like kind of pioneer in the space. It could also be to do with ensuring that people who are suppliers to the Welsh public sector are using digital and technology in a sustainable way and having influences kind of wider than just public services. And it could also be as well to do with putting a bit of clout behind Welsh Government's recommendations to be net zero by ensuring that as the Welsh public sector, we are doing everything that we need to be doing and not looking like hypocrites by not doing that. So that's that motivation. And then the other one that we kind of teased out is identifying where being more sustainable could actually support some of CDPS's wider goals for improved public services. So this is things like where would being more sustainable actually have cost savings, like for example, through using cloud technologies that could reduce carbon emissions of technology, but it could also save money for public services. So looking at those opportunities as well. So they're the motivations, and the problem that we're looking at, I've kind of broken it down into these two parts. So part of it's about we don't have a shared understanding of the role that digital and technology plays in reducing emissions in the public sector. So this isn't a new area. There's lots of research and guidance in this area, and lots of people have lots of opinions on it. But what we don't currently have is a clear understanding of what are the factors, where's the most impact, is it the most impact in the space of reducing the carbon footprint of the wider service, reducing the need for printing, the need for people to travel, is it that kind of space that there's the most opportunity? Is the most opportunity actually in reducing the carbon footprint of digital and technology itself and that sort of thing? So the first problem is all about just getting clarity around that. What do we know? What don't we know? And all that kind of thing. And then the second part of it is how can we help public servants in Wales to actually implement this best practice? So now that we know what the best practice is, do public servants have the right support? Do they have awareness of what they need to be doing? Do they have the right skills? And all that kind of thing. So they're the two sides of this discovery and what we'll be looking at. Are there any questions anyone wants to ask about that? Any challenges or things that you'd tweak?
Looks good to me, Jess. Janine.
Cool.
Okay, thank you, Jess. I think the next slide is on user research progress. So I think you'll be taking us through that one as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, so what we've been doing as well since our last show and tell is progressing our user research plans, and I think we're quite close to starting to recruit people to take part. We've been having support from our comms professionals to like just tweak the messaging that we put out there, and the way that we are going to recruit is going to be through using our networks primarily. So just making sure that we're kind of going to be saying the same sort of things to people. We've got a slick process for people to book in a slot. It's what we've been working on, and also the ability for people to be able to take part in English or Welsh. We're just setting all of that up, and then once we do, then we'll be getting people to sign up, and then the next bit will be just ensuring we have everything we need to do the interviews. We've got our discussion guides and consent forms and anything else that we need. And yeah, I think that's all the progress from last week.
Great, thank you, Jess. Any other questions on user research plans or the other slides so far? Okay, so we're going to head into what's been progressing on the best practice research, and I'll hand over to Carwyn to give an update on that.
There we go. Hi, thanks, James. So we've had a few different strands to the best practice research. We had a few conversations, and we've done a bit of desk research. Some very productive conversations with people from DEFRA, who are leading on the UK government's as a stance on this across public sector. In particular, we've been highlighted that we should speak to the Sustainable Technology Advice and Reporting Group, which is publishing information from a UK government point of view. So we're going to make a point of collaborating and working with them, and not duplicating either. That conversation led to sort of an understanding of where they are working and also where they have not got to yet. So it fits quite well within our scope conversations. That where we've chosen to look at is complementary to the work that's already been done there. So that's good news. And we've also had a few initial conversations with GDS, got a few contacts into there. There's obviously that they're sort of a complementary group. Jess, do you want to just mention, I know you've had a few other conversations. Are there any others that you want to flag up that we've had? If not, so we'll keep that till the end, sort of highlights conversations. Then on the desk research side, we've split this up into three strands. We've been looking at the existing policy, broad scope policy that's out there that could influence this piece of work. So what rules and regulations, what's guidance is there, and not necessarily directly in the digital space, but just could influence this. That feels important. And then the other two strands are to look at the best practice in this space in Wales and the UK, so hence the sort of DEFRA and GDS conversations, and also to look at this from an international perspective to see what information we can find out there about what is being done globally in this space, both in the public sector, but obviously globally that may be more in the technology sector space itself. So that's what we've been up to. I'll pass over back to James then for the next part.
Thank you, Carwyn. Jess, there's something on chat from Edwina, which hopefully you can answer, and I think there's something else you're going to mention too.
Sounds very mysterious, doesn't it? Yes, so the types of organisations we're looking for are a mix across the Welsh public sector, so local government, Welsh government, arm's length bodies, NHS. Like, we want to go quite broad, I think, and not focus in on any specific area. And then within those organizations, we want groups of different types of professionals. So we want like digital and technology leaders, we want to speak to more digital practitioners, procurement people, sustainability professionals. So we are going quite broad, but we've worked on a bit of a participant specification to make sure we're getting all the mixes that we want. So we don't want it to be like only looking at people in one location or only looking at people with high digital maturity. We want to make sure we get a breadth of different people. So hopefully that answers your question, Edwina, but let us know if you've got any follow-up questions. And the other thing that I was going to mention is something else we've been doing is having a few chats with some of the other CDPS teams who have done similar work or work in this space with the same sorts of groups of people. So we have made contact with the landscape review team, and hopefully we'll have a chat this sprint with them about how they've gone about doing research in the past with these groups and anything we can learn from them. And then we've also had a chat with Susan's wider team, who are responsible for the CDPS standards. because the user groups that we're researching, again, are very similar. So I think there's stuff that we can share and learn from each other there. So we're hooking up there.
Thank you, Jess. Just pause there for a moment to see if any other questions come through. Okay, while we're waiting to see if any pop up, we already mentioned the week notes. They'll be available on the website. The show and tells we mentioned the frequency of those and the recordings being available on YouTube. I think do a reply all in the email as well to give you those links in case they're missed. Obviously got the Twitter engagement, so there'll be some tweets going out after this presentation, and you can email me using good old-fashioned email as well. So that concludes what we'd prepared today. So really the time left is for any questions.
There's one in the chat. There's two in the chat. There we go.
Yeah, great. So thanks, Edwina. I think if you're looking to widen to orgs such as housing, there's Community Housing Cymru's IT Network, and also sustainability leads in each association. Cool. So we'll make a note of that if we haven't already got them on the stakeholder list, and have a think about that.
Is housing within CDPS's remit of organisations it supports?
So they're not considered public sector, but they provide a public service and they receive Welsh Government funding. So I think they have a lot they could add to this.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, the housing stock itself, the three that we interact with up here in North Wales, they have enough housing stock and the user base. Certainly, it could well be worth adding that in. So just mention, James, that one of the things we're looking at, and maybe this is a question to the audience. So we'll be, as we go, publishing information of what we've discovered. So the desk research, obviously, that's going to be one that comes up soon. Just sort of going to be collating that. Just any questions about any sort of best ways to present that to the kind of audience that we have here. We've got some ideas, but just open that up a bit, maybe see what people think.
If you're finding it hard to find inspiration just now, feel free to drop any ideas over on email.
James. Edwina's got a, I can
oh,
see
great.
her hand.
Go for it. Go for it, Edwina.
Yeah, I think if we can make it as interactive as possible, I think the lessons from some of the show and tells that we've run is the more interactive you can make it, the better. You know, getting people to, answer questions or to maybe just some form of interactivity, I think is good. It gets people making sure we're on our toes and listening. Useful.
Yeah, definitely. Janine?
Building on Ed's point, really, many of you will know about Data Map Wales, which is our spatial platform for presenting data. So any opportunities really as part of this work moving forward to present information spatially, then a conversation with the Data Map Wales team early doors would be really useful. If you haven't seen, I can post a link to it in the chat. It's really well regarded as a service cross public services thing, and we're up for a little plug. We're up for a data and technology award later in the month at a UK level, so we might even come in with a gong as well.
Cool, sounds good.
Just thinking, James, just if nothing else, the map of where the stakeholders are geographically would be quite a nice thing to be able to show. So that's one example.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take that away and see what we come up with. But yeah, great. We can look into that. Anything else from anyone? Can't see any other hands raised. Have I missed anything? Anything anyone was expecting to be discussed today that hasn't been? On that case,
put the link in the chat for Data Map Wales.
Perfect, thank you. Well, Diolch, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoons, and keep in touch. Thank you.
Right.